say buying a foreclosed home is the American dream on a budget. Nobody tells you that some houses get foreclosed for reasons that have nothing to do with money. Nobody tells you that sometimes the previous owner knew exactly what they were leaving behind. I learned that the hard way in Terre Haute, Indiana. Look, I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of real estate expert or anything. My name's Garrett, and up until last year, I was renting a crappy apartment in Springfield, Illinois, paying $1,200 a month for a place where I could hear my neighbors arguing through the walls every single night. I worked at a logistics company doing data entry, nothing fancy, but I'd been saving up for years. When I finally had enough for a down payment, I started looking for houses. That's when I found it on one of those foreclosure auction websites. A farmhouse in Terre Haute, Indiana. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, sitting on 2 full acres of land. The pictures looked amazing. White painted exterior, wraparound porch, big windows, the kind of place you see in movies about family reunions or whatever. And the price? $95,000. I literally refreshed the page 3 times because I thought it was a typo. My buddy Travis thought I was being stupid. We were drinking beer at his place when I showed him the listing on my phone. He looked at it and just shook his head. "Dude, houses don't go for that cheap unless something's seriously wrong with them," he said. "It's a foreclosure," I told him. "That's how they work. Bank just wants to get rid of it." "Yeah, but still, that's like, what, a third of what it should cost?" I didn't want to hear it though. I'd already run the numbers in my head about 100 times. Even if I needed to put $20,000 into repairs, I'd still be way ahead. My mortgage payment would be like $600 a month, way less than rent. The auction was online, and I stayed up until midnight on a Tuesday to bid on it. My hands were actually shaking when I entered my final bid. When I won, I just sat there staring at my laptop screen for like 10 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I owned a house, an actual house with land. The closing process took about 6 weeks. I remember the title company lady, this older woman named Patricia, kept asking me if I'd had the property inspected. I told her yeah, I'd hired a guy named Ron who did home inspections. He charged me $400 and spent like 3 hours walking around the place with his clipboard. He'd found some minor stuff. The roof needed some shingles replaced in a few years. There was some old wiring in the basement that should probably get updated eventually, and the back porch had a loose board. Nothing major, nothing that freaked me out. Ron had written in his report that the house appeared to be on septic system, as is standard for rural properties. I didn't think anything of it. My parents' cabin up in Wisconsin was on septic. It wasn't a big deal. I moved in on a Saturday in late March. It was one of those perfect spring days where it's just warm enough to have the windows open. Travis helped me move my stuff in his pickup truck. We made like 4 trips back and forth from Springfield. The whole time, I kept just feeling so damn proud of myself, you know? Like I'd really accomplished something. "You gonna get lonely out here?" Travis asked while we were setting up my bed frame. The house was pretty isolated. My nearest neighbor was probably half a mile down the road. "Nah, man, peace and quiet, that's what I'm paying for." After Travis left, I ordered pizza and ate it sitting on my back porch, looking out at my property. The sun was going down and everything looked golden. There were trees at the back of the property, and I could hear birds doing their evening thing. I felt like I'd finally made it. The first month was pretty great, honestly. I spent most of my free time just doing basic stuff to the place. Painted the bedroom, fixed that loose porch board, cleared out some of the junk the previous owner had left in the barn. There was a lot of weird stuff in there, old farming equipment that was basically just rust at this point, some rotted lumber, random car parts. I filled up like 6 garbage bags just from the barn alone. One thing I noticed was that there weren't any photos or information about the previous owner anywhere in the foreclosure documents. Usually you can find something online, right? But when I searched the address, nothing came up except the foreclosure listing. The neighbors didn't seem to know much either. I'd waved at the guy who lived down the road a few times, but we'd never really talked. Everything was fine until June. That's when the smell started. At first, I thought maybe an animal had died under the house or something. It was this gross sewage kind of smell that would hit me randomly. Some days I wouldn't notice it at all. Other days, especially when it was hot, it was pretty bad. I checked all the usual places, made sure there wasn't a dead raccoon in the crawl space or anything. Couldn't find anything. Then one morning I went to take a shower, and the water in the bathtub was just sitting there. Wouldn't drain at all. I tried plunging it, tried that Drano stuff from the hardware store. Nothing worked, and the smell was getting worse, way worse. That's when I noticed the basement. I didn't go down there much because it was unfinished and kind of creepy, just concrete and exposed beams. But when I opened the basement door that day, the smell hit me like a physical wall, and there was water on the floor. Brown, disgusting water that was seeping up from somewhere. I stood at the top of the basement stairs for a minute, just staring down at it. My stomach felt weird. Not like I was gonna throw up exactly, just uncomfortable. Something about the way that water looked bothered me more than it should have. I called a plumber that afternoon, guy named Eddie who had good reviews online. He came out the next day, took one look at the basement, and told me I needed a septic company, not a plumber. "Your septic tank's probably full or backed up," he said. "That's sewage down there, man. You don't want to mess around with that." The word sewage made my skin crawl. I'd been living here for 3 months, drinking the water, cooking with it, showering in it. Eddie gave me the number for a septic service company. I called them as soon as he left. The septic company couldn't come out until the following Tuesday. Those 4 days waiting were horrible. I couldn't use the bathtub at all, and I was paranoid about flushing the toilet too much. The smell in the basement got so bad, I had to keep that door closed and stuff a towel under it. I stayed at Travis's place for 2 nights because I just couldn't deal with it. "Maybe you should have listened to me about the house being too cheap," Travis said while we were eating Chinese food on his couch. "Yeah, thanks, man. Super helpful right now." "I'm just saying, how much is this gonna cost you to fix?" "I don't know, few $100 maybe? That's what septic pumping costs, right?" Travis shrugged. He didn't know either. When Tuesday finally came, 2 guys showed up in a truck that said Miller and Son Septic Service on the side. The older guy was probably in his 50s, had a gray beard. The younger one looked like he was maybe 20. Could have been his actual son for all I know. "So, you got a backup situation?" the older guy asked. His name was Dale, according to his shirt. "Yeah, sewage coming up in the basement. The bathtub won't drain either." Dale nodded like he'd seen it 1,000 times before. "Let's take a look at where your tank is." That's when things got weird. We walked around the yard, and Dale was looking at the ground like he could see through it or something. He had this metal probe thing that he kept pushing into the dirt in different spots. "You know where the tank is?" he asked me. "No, I just moved in a few months ago. It's a foreclosure. I figured you guys would know how to find it." Dale and the younger guy spent like an hour poking around my yard. They checked near the house, out by the barn, over by the tree line. Nothing. They couldn't find any sign of where a septic tank might be buried. "This is strange," Dale said, scratching his beard. "Every house on septic has to have the tank within a certain distance of the building. Usually you can spot where the access lid is, or at least find the distribution box." "Maybe the previous owner just covered it up really well," I said. "Maybe. You got any paperwork about the septic system? Installation records, inspection documents, anything like that?" I went inside and grabbed the folder with all my closing documents. There was literally nothing about the septic system except one line in the disclosure that said, "Property utilizes septic waste system." That was it. No permits, no installation date, nothing. Dale looked through the papers and frowned. "Yeah, this doesn't tell us anything. Look, we're going to need to bring in the GPR equipment, ground-penetrating radar. It'll help us locate the tank." "How much does that cost?" I asked. My hands felt sweaty. "It's an extra $300 for the GPR scan, but at this point, it's the only way we're going to find your tank." I didn't really have a choice. I told him to do it. They left and came back 2 days later with different equipment. This machine that looked kind of like a fancy lawnmower that Dale pushed around my yard while staring at a screen. The younger guy was taking notes on a clipboard. I was watching from the porch, drinking coffee even though it was hot outside. My neighbor, the guy from down the road, had actually stopped his truck and was watching too. First time I'd really seen him up close. He was probably in his 60s, wearing overalls and a John Deere cap. "You having septic problems?" he called out to me. "Yeah, can't find the tank." He made a face I couldn't quite read. "Huh, that's not good." Something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable, but before I could ask what he meant, Dale was calling me over. "Mr. Garrett, can you come here for a second?" I walked over to where he was standing, about 30 feet from the back of my house. The younger guy looked nervous, which I didn't understand. "So, we found something," Dale said slowly, "but it's not a septic tank." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we found where your waste is going, but it's not going into any kind of proper septic system." He showed me the screen on his GPR machine. Honestly, it just looked like fuzzy lines to me. "See this void here? That's a pit, just a hole in the ground. And these lines here are pipes running from your house straight into it." I stared at the screen, trying to understand what he was telling me. "I don't get it." "What's a pit?" Dale took off his cap and wiped his forehead. "Look, I'm not supposed to make judgments about this stuff, but whoever owned this house before you, they didn't install a real septic system. They just dug a hole and ran the pipes into it. Everything from your house, all the sewage and wastewater, it's just been dumping into this pit." My brain felt fuzzy. "But that's illegal, right?" "Extremely illegal and extremely dangerous. That pit is probably contaminating the groundwater around here. Your well, your neighbor's wells, everything." The coffee I'd been drinking suddenly tasted wrong in my mouth. "My well?" "I've been drinking that water." Dale and the younger guy exchanged a look. "Yeah," Dale said quietly. "You're gonna need to call the county health department. Like, today. This is beyond what we can handle. This is a serious health code violation." My neighbor had walked over at some point. He was standing there listening, and his face had gone pale. "How long has this been like this?" the neighbor asked. "No way to know for sure," Dale said. "Could be years. Could be since the house was built. Jesus Christ, my neighbor said. He looked at me like I'd personally done something to him. My well has tasted funny for the past year. I thought it was just mineral buildup. I felt like I couldn't breathe right. I didn't know. I just bought the place. We need to call the health department, Dale said again. I'm actually required to report this. This is a contamination situation. He pulled out his phone and made the call right there in my yard. I just stood there feeling numb. The sun was beating down and sweat was running down my back, but I felt cold. Everything I'd thought about my perfect cheap house was falling apart, and I had this growing feeling in my gut that it was going to get much worse. The health department said they'd send someone out the next day. I didn't sleep that night, just laid in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the water I'd drunk over the past 3 months, all the showers I'd taken. I'd brushed my teeth with that water every single morning and night, cooked pasta in it, made coffee with it. My mind kept going to this dark place where I was imagining all the bacteria that had been going into my body. Around 2 a.m., I got up and drank some bottled water I had in the fridge, even though I wasn't thirsty. Just felt like I needed to flush out my system or something. Probably didn't work that way, but I did it anyway. The health department inspector showed up at 9 a.m. the next morning. Her name was Susan Chen, and she had this official-looking badge and a clipboard with like 50 pages on it. She was maybe 40, Asian lady with her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She seemed nice enough at first, but her face got more serious the longer she was there. So, the septic company filed a report about an illegal waste pit on the property, she said, looking at her papers. I need to inspect the site and also test your well water. Yeah, okay, whatever you need to do. She spent about an hour walking around with some kind of measuring equipment, taking photos, writing stuff down. Then she came to the back door with these little glass bottles. I need to collect water samples from multiple sources, kitchen sink, bathroom sink, and directly from the wellhead if possible. I showed her where everything was, watched her fill up those little bottles with my tap water. The water looked clear and normal, which somehow made it worse. Like, you couldn't even tell there was anything wrong with it just by looking. How long does testing take? I asked. The basic contamination panel takes about 48 hours. But, Mr. Garrett, I need to be straight with you. Based on what the septic company found and the proximity of that pit to your well, I'm almost certain we're going to find fecal coliform bacteria in your water supply. The way she said it so matter-of-fact made my stomach turn. What does that mean exactly? It means you've been drinking water contaminated with human waste. She saw my face and her expression softened a little. I'm sorry. I know this is difficult to hear, but you need to stop using this water immediately. Don't drink it. Don't cook with it. Don't even brush your teeth with it until we get the results back. Shit, I said. Then I realized I'd cursed in front of a government official and felt stupid about it. Do you have family you can stay with for a few days? She asked. Not really. Not around here anyway. She wrote something else down on her clipboard. I'm going to recommend that the county issue a preliminary uninhabitable designation for this property. That's not final, but it means until we can assess the full extent of the contamination, you shouldn't be living here. My chest felt tight. Uninhabitable? I have a mortgage on this place. I can't just not live here. I understand this is stressful, but contaminated water is a serious health risk. Exposure to E. coli and other coliform bacteria can cause severe illness. She paused. Have you experienced any symptoms? Stomach issues, nausea, diarrhea? I thought about it. I mean, I've had some stomach stuff here and there, but I figured it was just stress from moving and everything. You should see a doctor. Get yourself checked out. After she left, I just sat on my porch for a long time. I called my boss and told him I needed to take a personal day. Didn't even explain why. Then I called Travis. It's bad, man, I told him. Like, really bad. How bad? The house doesn't have a real septic system. The previous owner just dug a pit and dumped everything into it. Now the health department is saying I can't live here. Travis was quiet for a second. Holy shit, Garrett. What are you gonna do? I have no idea. That afternoon, my neighbor stopped by. The older guy in the overalls. He knocked on my front door, and when I opened it, he looked angry. I called a water testing company, he said, without even introducing himself. They're coming tomorrow to test my well. If my water's contaminated because of your property, we're gonna have a problem. Look, I didn't know about any of this, I said. I just bought the place. I'm a victim here too. Don't matter if you knew or didn't know. You own it now. That makes it your responsibility. He pointed at me. My wife's been sick on and off for months. If she's been drinking contaminated water, I'm holding you accountable. That's not fair. I didn't do anything wrong. Fair? He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. You think any of this is fair? You bought a house with an illegal septic system that's been poisoning the groundwater. Now everyone around here has to deal with it. He left before I could say anything else. I closed the door and locked it, even though it was the middle of the day. My hands were shaking. The test results came back 2 days later. Susan from the health department called me. Mr. Garrett, I need you to come down to the county office. We need to discuss the findings. Can't you just tell me over the phone? I'd prefer to do this in person. The county health department office was in this old brick building downtown. Susan met me in a conference room with another guy who introduced himself as the county health director. That's when I knew it was really bad. They showed me the test results. I'm not a scientist, so most of it didn't make sense, but I understood the highlighted parts. E. coli levels were like 100 times higher than what was considered safe. There were other bacteria too, stuff I'd never heard of. Coliform, streptococcus. The numbers were all in red. Your well water is severely contaminated, Susan said. The property is officially designated as uninhabitable until the contamination source is eliminated and the water supply is remediated. What does that mean? Like, what do I have to do? The health director slid another paper across the table. You'll need to install a proper septic system, seal and abandon the existing pit properly, and either drill a new well or have your current well completely sanitized and retested. We've also detected contamination spreading to adjacent properties. My neighbor's angry face flashed through my mind. How much is all this gonna cost? You'll need to get estimates from licensed contractors, but typically for a situation like this, you're looking at $75,000 to $90,000. The room felt like it was spinning. I walked out of that county office in a daze, got in my car, and just sat there in the parking lot for probably 20 minutes. The numbers kept running through my head. $75,000 to $90,000. I'd paid $95,000 for the entire house. I was basically going to have to pay for the house twice just to make it livable. I called my bank that afternoon, talked to some loan officer named Jennifer, who sounded way too chipper for what I was about to tell her. So, I need to know what my options are, I said. The house I bought has some serious problems, and I need to do major repairs. Well, you could apply for a home equity line of credit, she said. How much equity do you have in the property? I put down $15,000, so I owe about $80,000. And what's the current market value? That's when I realized I didn't even know. I'm not sure. Well, if you purchased it for $95,000 and you need to do repairs, the current value might actually be less than what you owe, depending on the extent of the damage. Less than what I owe. Those words hit me like a truck. I was underwater on a house I couldn't even live in. I ended up staying at a Super 8 motel off the interstate. It cost $67 a night, which doesn't sound like much, but it adds up fast when you're also paying a mortgage. My mortgage payment was $623 a month. Now I was spending an extra $2,000 a month just to have a place to sleep. Travis let me store some of my stuff at his apartment, but I couldn't move in with him because his lease didn't allow it. Most of my furniture was still in the house in Terre Haute. I'd go back every few days to grab clothes and stuff, but being in that house made my skin crawl now. Every time I looked at a faucet, I thought about the contaminated water that had been coming out of it. The estimates started coming in about a week later. I'd called 5 different septic system companies. The cheapest quote was $68,000. The most expensive was $97,000. And that was just for the septic system installation and pit remediation. The well situation was separate. A well drilling company told me it would cost another $12,000 to drill a new well in a location far enough from the contaminated area. Or I could try to sanitize and rehabilitate the existing well for about $5,000, but there was no guarantee it would work. I was sitting in my motel room doing the math on a notepad. Even with the cheapest options, I was looking at $73,000 minimum. I had maybe $8,000 left in my savings account after the down payment and moving expenses. I called my parents in Wisconsin, but they're retired and living on Social Security. They didn't have that kind of money. "Can you just walk away from it?" my mom asked on the phone. "Let the bank have it back?" "That's called foreclosure, Mom. It would destroy my credit. I'd never be able to buy another house, and I'd still owe the difference between what the bank sells it for and what I owe on the loan." She was quiet. "I'm so sorry, honey. I don't know what to tell you." Then the lawsuit started. My neighbor, the angry guy in overalls, his name was Richard Kowalski. He filed a civil suit against me in county court. His water tested positive for contamination, and his wife had been sick with some kind of intestinal infection. His lawyer was claiming $45,000 in damages. Medical bills, pain and suffering, property value loss, all that stuff. 2 other neighbors I'd never even met also filed suits. Apparently, the contamination had spread through the groundwater to at least 4 properties in the area. Everyone wanted money from me, money I didn't have. I had to hire a lawyer, a guy named Phil Brennan, who handled property disputes. His retainer alone was $5,000. He looked at all the paperwork from the house purchase and just kept shaking his head. "Did your home inspector check the septic system?" he asked. He noted that the house appeared to be on septic, but he didn't dig it up or anything. "Did he verify the tank's location? Check for permits?" "I don't think so. He just wrote down what the disclosure said." Phil leaned back in his chair. "Okay, here's the situation. You might have a claim against the home inspector for negligence. He should have verified the septic system's existence and legality. That's literally his job. But even if we win that case, it'll take years, and there's no guarantee his insurance will cover the full amount of damages. What about the previous owner? Can't we go after him? We can try, but if he foreclosed on the property, he's probably judgment-proof. Meaning even if we win, we won't be able to collect because he doesn't have any assets. I felt like I was drowning. So, what do I do? Honestly, you might want to consider bankruptcy. Chapter 7 would eliminate most of these debts, including the lawsuits. You'd lose the house, but at this point, the house is a liability, not an asset. Bankruptcy. I was 32 years old and looking at bankruptcy because I'd tried to buy a house. That night in the motel, I couldn't stop thinking about the previous owner. Whoever he was, he'd known. He had to have known that there was no real septic system. He'd lived there for who knows how long, dumping sewage into a pit in his backyard, probably drinking the same contaminated water I'd been drinking. Why would someone do that? Just dig a hole instead of installing a proper system. And then when the bank foreclosed, he just walked away and let it become someone else's problem. I pulled out the foreclosure documents and looked through them again. There was a name. Dennis Hobart. That was the previous owner. I grabbed my laptop and searched for him online. What I found made everything so much worse. Dennis Hobart had died 6 months before I bought the house. I found his obituary on a funeral home website in Terre Haute. Died at age 67. No cause of death listed, but there was a photo. Thin guy with gray hair and this weird smile that didn't reach his eyes. The obit said he was survived by a daughter in Ohio. But that wasn't the part that freaked me out. I kept digging through search results and found an old news article from the Terre Haute Tribune-Star, dated about 3 years back. The headline read, "Local man hospitalized after severe bacterial infection." It was about Dennis Hobart. According to the article, he'd been admitted to the hospital with a serious infection that doctors traced back to long-term exposure to contaminated water. He'd nearly died. The article mentioned that health officials were investigating potential water quality issues at his property, but that Hobart had refused to cooperate with the investigation. He knew. The whole time, he knew the water was poisoned, and he just kept living there. I found more articles. Apparently, there'd been complaints from neighbors, even back then, about strange smells and water quality problems, but nothing ever came of it. Hobart had died before the health department could force him to fix anything. My hands were shaking as I read. This guy had slowly poisoned himself for years, got sick from it, nearly died, and just kept living in that house anyway. And then he actually died, probably from complications related to the contaminated water, and the bank foreclosed and sold it to me without anyone checking if the septic system was even real. I called Phil, my lawyer, even though it was almost 10 p.m. The previous owner died from this, I told him. He got sick from the contaminated water, and he died. Phil was quiet for a second. That doesn't change your legal situation, Garrett. I'm sorry, but doesn't that prove something? That the contamination is dangerous? It proves the water was bad, which we already knew. Look, get some sleep. We'll talk more tomorrow. I couldn't sleep though. I kept thinking about Dennis Hobart living in that house, drinking that water, knowing it was making him sick. What kind of person does that? And why? Around midnight, I decided I needed to go back to the house. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd find some answers there. The drive from the motel took about 40 minutes. It was dark, no moon, and the road to the house was empty. When I pulled up, the farmhouse looked different at night, less like a dream home and more like something dead. I let myself in with my key. The smell hit me immediately. That sewage smell, worse than ever. The health department had put these official notices on the doors saying the property was condemned, and in the darkness, they looked like warnings at a crime scene. I walked through the rooms with my phone's flashlight. Everything looked the same, but felt different, like the house itself was sick. I went down to the basement, even though every part of me said not to. The brown water was still there, pooled in the corners. In the beam of my flashlight, I could see things floating in it. I didn't look too close. That's when I noticed something I'd never seen before. On the far wall of the basement, someone had written something in marker. The writing was faded, and I had to get closer to read it. They said, "Fix it. Too expensive. Rather die here than leave." Dennis Hobart's handwriting. Had to be. I stood there staring at those words, and suddenly I understood. He'd known about the septic problem. Probably got quoted the same insane prices I was getting quoted. And instead of fixing it or walking away, he just decided to stay and let it kill him slowly. Maybe he couldn't afford to fix it. Maybe he couldn't afford to leave. So he just stayed. And now I was trapped the same way he'd been trapped. The bankruptcy paperwork was on Phil's desk when I met with him 3 days later. All I had to do was sign. "You'll lose the house. Your credit will be damaged for 7 to 10 years, but you'll be free of the debt and the lawsuits," Phil explained. I signed the papers. I'm writing this from Travis's couch, where I've been crashing for the past month while I wait for the bankruptcy to process. I found out last week that the bank is going to demolish the house rather than try to sell it again. The contamination is too extensive, and the cleanup costs more than the property is worth. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking about that message on the basement wall, about Dennis Hobart choosing to die rather than leave. I got a medical bill yesterday. Apparently I have some kind of chronic intestinal damage from the contaminated water. The doctor says it might be permanent. I guess Dennis Hobart is still winning, even from the grave.